He's an internationally acclaimed Mexican chef and owner of Pujol Restaurant in Mexico City, the number 5 best restaurant in the world on 2022's The World's 50 Best Restaurant list. And he says he views success not by recognition, but by being proud of what he does every day. Hey everyone, I'm Cappy, and welcome to Beyond the Plate. It's season 12, and we're back. This season, we're once again bringing you incredible chefs from around the world, some iconic food personalities, and some of the best in the restaurant biz. We're pulling back the curtain for some real conversations and stories you haven't heard anywhere else. And if you're just tuning in, don't miss Heard, our short and fun audio newsletter that comes out every other Monday right here on Beyond the Plate. I'm sharing what's on my plate, from culinary insights to restaurants and recipes, all in just a few minutes. Enjoy our season premiere with Chef Enrique Olvera. Chef, first off, thank you for being here. What makes you proud today that also made you proud of what you were doing in the kitchen 10 or 20 years ago?
I think all of us started in a way cooking because we love to entertain. I think most of the chefs that I know, they started at home some way or another, whether it was the grandmother or their mother, and just the joy of having people over at home and going to a market and cooking as a family and maybe having a glass of wine while you were cooking, and then just sitting on the table and having good conversations. I mean, those things will never get old. Yeah, I think the recognition aspect of cooking, like the success, whatever that means, is something that is secondary, And I think it's also a natural progression of getting better at it, but it should never be the fuel, It should never be the reason why you're waking up in the morning, because after all, those things are temporary, and they say success and failure are siblings, so you shouldn't take neither of them too serious.
Okay, so about that recognition, arguably one of the world's greatest chefs, Ferran Adrià, credits you for reshaping how the world perceives Mexican cuisine. He says there was Mexican food before Enrique Olvera and Mexican food after Enrique Olvera. So that type of recognition has to mean something to you.
Yeah, of course. That's like if Escoffier was saying good things about you, right? So of course, his words are very humbling. I think we were fortunate to be in Mexico at the right time. I mean, our contribution to the local scene is not isolated. Things were happening as well in Peru, in Brazil, in other Latin American countries where national cuisines had been a little bit left behind, whether because we were too familiar with them or because they were in a different context. And I think what we were successfully did was start the conversation more about the future and the present than the past, And I think also Ferran, definitely give him credit for being able to do that for the entire industry. Before Ferran Adrià, most of us thought that being a talented chef meant that you were consistent, that you were proficient in your technique, and that you were able to maintain a tight ship. When we were in school, I remember, that was the meaning of being a chef. We were not ever taught to improvise or be creative about menus. You actually wanted quite the opposite. It has been extraordinary years for the industry. I think up to 2020, the industry was flourishing. I think it's an industry that also started to attract talents from other disciplines. And I think that has also been super positive for the guest experience in general. Obviously, COVID was a huge blow to all of us. And I think after COVID, you've seen a normal wave of more comfort food, going towards traditional style. Also, I think with social media and not knowing the differences between what's real and what's not, especially food-wise, it's really hard to judge food on a phone because you're not tasting. I think the industry is now a little bit all over the place, which is also good, but in a very different position from what it was during the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's go back to your childhood. Share a little bit about what your childhood was like growing up in Mexico. Did you grow up in Mexico City?
Yeah, I grew up here in Mexico, a middle-class family. Back then, Mexican cuisine in Mexico City tended to be a little bit more international. My mom would make pina schnitzel, we call milanesas. Those milanesas show up in tortas on the street. The cantinas have garlic wrapped shrimp. And we consider that to be very Mexican. My mom, fortunately for me, was always interested in cooking. And she was also, I think she loved the fact that I was interested interested sharing the kitchen with her because it's only me and my older brother, and my brother never liked the kitchen. No, I think he never enjoyed any part of it, not washing dishes, not cooking, no, nothing. My dad did cook a little bit on Sundays, but it's also, I think he's becoming more and more interested as he aged because his parents were bakers, both have bake shops. So I think it's something that he's exploring now that he's a little bit older. But yeah, I had like a normal childhood like anybody else in Mexico City, intended to be a soccer player like most Mexican kids. That didn't go well. And then in school, I think I was like a little bit crazy, like any other chef. Never had problems with grades. No, I think that was not the issue. It was just like, it felt like being a lawyer or being an accountant was definitely not for me, or an engineer. I wanted back then to feel like more free, like being able to, like this idea of like running wild and not following the norms. And I think the kitchen attracted a lot of those people. So I was one of those crazy kids. And now, at 49, I'm more of an engineer now. I mean, as the restaurant grows and the industry has evolved, I think it's also a very different game. And now it's a lot more entrepreneurial. You have to be like very mindful of decisions. Now it's a precision. It's like bowling. No, you have to be like super precise.
Do you enjoy that? Like that engineering of the industry? Or
we've become really good at it. So I enjoy it because we're super excited about challenges. I do miss obviously a little bit the crazy part of it, like the more a cappella, unplugged aspect of it. I think it's also beautiful. And I also think we all have eras in our life. No, I like to say that humans are like trees, and sometimes you lose your leaves, sometimes you're flourishing, sometimes you feel like very creative and you want to improvise. Sometimes you don't want to touch the thing because you might be tired. And all of us that are in the industry need to be a little bit more accepting of that. It's truly one of the most exhausting professions out there. And if we're not able to accept that we cannot perform at 100% level 100% of the days, and are willing to give ourselves a break, it's really hard to sustain a long career, which I think it's in the interest of everyone.
You seem to have a very big emphasis on quality of ingredients. Where did you learn that?
I think it's something that we all understood, or well, actually not understood, but we all heard as part of our upbringing, whether you went to culinary school or you were working with a chef. I think everybody has heard now that the product is the most important part. But then I don't think you understand the phrase until you worked for a while. And also, I think until you start eating properly. When you have a strawberry that's in the peak of the season and you ate it off the plant, you don't need any more explanation than that. If I go back the last few years, the most delicious food I've had is either raw, like a simple ingredient raw, or very lightly cooked. I think of, for example, a carabinero, in the south of Spain, just like passed over the grill with a glass of sherry on the side. That's literally heaven.
Simplicity.
Yeah, and I think if we're able as cooks to understand when to stop, it would be amazing for everyone. Sometimes I don't know if you remember when the Food Network was still running recipes, and you would see the chefs, and a lot of the times I watched those shows, and I remember saying like, okay, you're done by the middle of the recipe, but they would keep going and adding and plating more and more. And I was like, this is way too much. And I think this is something that you learn with age as you understand that luxury is in moderation. Luxury is not having everything you want whenever you want it, but actually being able to contain, curate. And I also, one of the books that changed my life, I don't know if you've read it, but it's called The Soul of Soil. It's a beautiful book that talks about the relationship of the health of the soil to flavor. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. You have this beautiful heirloom corn that's been growing in Oaxaca in land, that has been taken care of by generations, that is still very biodiverse. And you take that corn and you put it on a plot of land in the highway of Mexico City. And that corn is not going to taste remotely similar to what it tasted somewhere else. It might even die, because the soil is not healthy. And healthy means that it has a lot of living organisms organisms, no? And it makes a lot of sense. And then also one thing that was to me very eye-opening was I attended a conference at Stonehill with Dan Barber, and he was talking about these carrots that he was planting. And he said that he had like a hazelnut factory next to the restaurant where I think they were doing something like a Nutella thing, no? And all the waste from the hazelnuts he was using to compost the carrots, and the carrots would take the flavor of the, very subtle obviously, but they would take the flavor of the compost. And he was saying like, just as you have jamón de bellota, you can have like a hazelnut carrot, no? Because the jamón de bellota will eat. And then I thought like, yeah, that's amazing, no? And then of course the soil is so important. And we're actually working with a producer here in Xochimilco, and we were giving like all the leftover carrots so that we would compost the carrots with carrots instead of with the hazelnuts, because I wanted my carrots to taste more like carrots, not to taste like hazelnuts. And I mean, it was hard to keep that program, but there's something to say there. And I see it in products like, for example, avocado, where before avocado was so popular worldwide, a lot of the avocados that were partially eaten by a bird or that fell on the ground were left there, and they were composting those trees. And now with the popularization of avocado, not only for like guacamole, but also for oil, most of the avocados that are on the ground are taken and converted into a byproduct of avocado. And the avocado, they don't taste like much anymore. They're fatty. They're not mature in the plant, no? And if you had an avocado like right off the tree on peak season, it's a very different. We should almost like try to think of as different products, no? The one that matures in a ice box, no, on a truck, and that matures on the tree.
It's crazy. That's really wild. Is there a big emphasis on like food waste and scraps and whatnot in Mexico? There's been so much talk about it here and around the world. I know it's a global thing, but I'm just curious.
I mean, Mexico is an immensely rich country, but also in very poor society. No, so using everything is something that we're used to. You would never waste anything. My mom still to this day sometimes goes to the restaurant and looks at the garbage cans, and she gets like super fiery if she sees something that we can use, because that's the other beautiful thing about Mexican culture is that there's no waste because there's a use to it, no? Because if you have to come up with for corn, it's very simple, no? To understand the leaves we use for the tamales, no? The corn we use for masa, the silk we use for a tea that is great for the kidneys, no? If you talk about a pumpkin, you use the flour, you use the leaves for a soup, and then obviously you use the pumpkin for cooking or for desserts. So chayote squash, the same thing. You use the root, you use everything. So anything and everything that is edible in Mexico gets used. I think in most countries, if you have a plague of grasshoppers, you spray pesticides. Here we grab them and cook them and put them next to quesillo. So I think out of necessity comes this sophistication and this, wealth, no? We're so wealthy from necessity.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you really start cooking? Was that like in high school?
I mean, I would help my mom. Then I was living in Querétaro, which is a town that is a city now. It was a town when I was there. Now it's a huge city. We moved back when I was in high school. I always enjoy eating well. So my mom was not here, and I started cooking for like my brother and I more casually. I also enjoyed going to the markets. In high school, by the end of high school, I was pretty clear that I wanted to pursue cooking. I got a couple of jobs, in part because also the CIA asked to have some experience back then. I think they took that off
back in the day
requirement. Yeah. But you needed to have, I think, I don't remember, it was like 4 months, 6 months. Yeah, so I did that. And then I went to CIA, did my internship back here in Mexico City at Maxime's de Paris, which had a spot here in Mexico City. And then after graduation, I went to Chicago to the Everest Room with Jan Yoho, which the other day I saw a post on Instagram from him. And it was great to even if it was a picture, I haven't seen him since I left Chicago. And then I opened Puyol. I mean, my career was definitely not what people would say it's a good path. I remember most people would say, like, after you graduate, you need to go work under a talented chef for a few years and then move up the ranks. And then perhaps when they open your restaurant, I was like straight from internship to opening a restaurant. I don't know what I was thinking, but in a way, it was great because I've never had a strong mentorship, and therefore I was able to create a style that was a little bit more my own. No, I didn't have a strong creative or philosophical influence, and I think that gave me a little bit of freedom in terms of the style that we're doing.
Back in like high school, when you were cooking for your brother and what types of things were you making?
Simple stuff like those Wiener schnitzels and tomatado. Would make soup, like chicken soup. Would make like a Mexican rice with Mexican meatballs that are one of my favorite because they're made with a caldillo and with chipotle.
Did you love the feeling of that, cooking at that age for people? And
yeah, I mean, it's a very different thing, no, from a restaurant. I think cooking at home is like an individual sport. Cooking in restaurants is a team effort. So it's a very different feeling. I still to this day, you know what I mean, obviously you enjoy the process, but I really enjoy like just like cooking and sitting down with somebody that you care for. I think there's, for me at least, that that's my fuel, no, like just being able to say like, I care about you instead of words using food. I think that's beautiful.
So how did you hear about CIA?
Back then, my girlfriend that then became my wife, her mom loved cooking. And she was the one that told me, no, there's this school in New York. And then also, I mean, the internet still, you had to connect with AOL. Remember the beep, beep, beep? There were 3 options for me. It was the New England Culinary School, the California Culinary Institute, and the CIA. I went with my dad a few months before. I started in January of 95 and I went to like November of 94. Like right after Thanksgiving. And I just remember like seeing the buildings, like this is incredible. It was like not even Disneyland had that effect on me. It was just like, this is insanely cool. Like everybody on their chef's hats. I mean, I was like the weird guy here in Mexico for wanting to be a chef. It was not normal back then. And just being able to see there were more weird creatures like myself, it was, I think, like a nice feeling.
Yeah. And you enjoyed the experience?
Yeah, it was one of the best experiences of my life. I loved every part of it. I just thought it was so much fun. The fact that it was also like so isolated, I think it helped, at least it helped me to stay focused on college. I was also 18 when I enrolled and when I moved there. So I was not of drinking age. So it was also like very easy to like stay like focused. I mean, in high school in Mexico, we all were drinking Bacardi since we were like 17 years old. And just being here, it felt like I really didn't need much. Obviously, when I turned 21, I was also very happy that I could go to the bars without feeling like I was going to risk my life.
What advice would you give to like a young cook today about culinary school?
Yeah, I mean, if you enjoy cooking, it's a beautiful career. I would say it's a marathon. I think sometimes when we're young, we're in a rush. And I think the sense of urgency is something that also cooks celebrate. And I'm all up for it. But also you have to pace yourself because it is such a demanding career energy-wise. You have to learn how to create your own spaces. And yeah, enjoy it because I think most of us don't realize when we're passing through an oasis that you're in an oasis, no?
Yeah, that's interesting. How did you wind up at Everest in Chicago?
When I graduated, I had 2 options in my mind. One was staying in New York City. They gave me a 6-month visa to work after graduation. So New York was one of my options, but it was really hard with a cook salary. None of my friends were going to the city, so I had no possibility of rooming up with anyone. And with the cook salary, it would almost be impossible to like pay for a flat and live decently. And then my father was working for a US company. He had an apartment in Chicago that he was using partially, like he was traveling, but the headquarters of the company were there. He told me, like, if you want, you can stay there for those 6 months and you don't have to pay rent. So I started looking at Chicago. I applied at Charlie Trotter, Everest. Those 2 were the heavy hitters. Back then, I was pretty sure that I wanted to do fine dining. I had a meal in Le Bernardin when I was 19 that changed my life. No, literally, just like seeing that level of execution and eating that, like literally changed my life drastically. Because before I thought cooking was just like cool and whatever, but I never thought it was like this level of experience, the entire thing. It was like discovering a new world completely, because obviously there was nothing like that in Mexico. No, there were no Michelin stars here, no chefs. All the restaurants that you came to in Mexico were more casual. You never knew who the chef was. They were not. It was like literally like life-changing. And I wanted to pursue that line of cooking. So that's why I ended up in Everest. I don't remember. I think I didn't get accepted at Charlie Trotter. Or I don't know if I think maybe Everest, the letter of acceptance came first. I don't remember that well.
Hey everyone, there's more of our conversation with Chef Enrique Olvera in just a couple minutes. We're excited to share that our friends at Ford's Gin are back this season, and they're once again mixing up something special. Throughout the season, they're creating custom cocktails inspired by the guests you're hearing from right now. We're so glad to be back with Joe Brook, Trade Advocacy Manager for Ford's Gin in Los Angeles. He created a drink inspired by Chef Enrique Olvera's use of native ingredients. I always love talking to Joe. He's incredibly creative, has a deep knowledge of cocktail history, and honestly, I learn something new every time we talk. I think you will too. Joe, what did you come up with for us this week?
Well, it's not just the native flavors that he plays around with. I know that the history of Pujol, it's Eastern Asian and some American influence. And so the challenge that I was facing was that this guy, his cocktail menu is based specifically off of the food items that they're serving that day. So what was the one-size-fits-all drink that I could present? Having it be a greeting, something spritzier, I call it the Polanco. So the Polanco, the template is very much based off of French 75, very much in the spritz section. It's going to be 1 part Ford's, half part of lemon juice, half part of hibiscus syrup, and about 2.5 parts of this Bichi Pet Mex. It's a Mexican vineyard that grows in the Baja Peninsula. Really nice, a little bit of funk. And then about 3 dashes of orange flower water. You combine all of those ingredients except the Pet Mex and you toss. It's basically a very light shake. You don't want it to get too diluted because water is the enemy of bubbles. And when you pour that out, you top it off with the Pet Mex. And you can also, if you wanted to, you can keep out the orange flower water and just drop it on top so that the effervescence kind of brings up all those wonderful floral notes. It's sort of a universal starting position that I would recommend. And knowing very little about how often he changes his menu, this would be my first stab.
Oh, this sounds so good. So good to have you back, Joe. To get the recipe for this cocktail, check out the episode notes in your podcast player. To learn more about Ford's Gin, go to fordsgin.com and follow them on social media at Ford's Gin. Please drink responsibly. Ford's London Dry Gin, 45% ABV, Brown-Forman, Louisville, Kentucky. Ford's Gin is a registered trademark. Ford's Gin, the cocktail gin. I didn't tell you this, but I'm actually based in Chicago. And so
that's great.
I'm familiar with Chef Jean Joho and Everest. And I talked to him this week because I wanted to ask him about you.
I don't think he remembers me.
He remembered, and he talked to like his chef at the time too. And he said he remembered they believe they took like one employee a year at that time or something like that. And they remember seeing your resume and they're like, this guy seems like really driven and he's interesting. And then he said he's been to Pujol a couple times, he said, and he mentioned to me, he said it's such a special place.
Please tell him next time that he comes, he lets me know.
I know,
should at
right?
least send him a mezcal, no? It's so embarrassing.
I'm going to tell him. He said you're doing fine dining in a different way and you're really elevating Mexican cuisine, utilizing classics. And he mentioned the mole was like nothing he's ever had before. And he said you're just representing Mexico in an incredible way, which I thought was really cool. Is there something, I know they're like, it's a let us entertain you, RIP to Everest. And there are a lot about like systems and whatnot. Is there something you learned there at your time at Everest that you think like helped shape the chef you are today?
It didn't feel like a let us entertain you restaurant. I mean, it felt like a family-run restaurant. Thierry, the chef de cuisine there, had a very tight ship. He was extremely demanding in a good way because he cared. He was not demanding because he was an asshole. He demanded because he truly cared about what we were putting out. So that, I think, was probably what I learned the most. And then they have this little system of like recipe cards in a box. I was there for the autumn-winter season. And I remember when it changed to winter, they would take out the recipes and they were saying like, okay, no, wintertime, what are we going to make? And depending if whatever was available, because as you know, like the seasons are changing and now you never know when, even back then, sometimes you didn't get the season right. They would have the recipe cards and they would come back to the same recipe recipes every year. And I really enjoy that system because in a way you're putting pressure off creativity, and you're always able to come back to the dishes. So there's a learning curve, and it's like a spiral where you're coming back to the same recipe year after year, but you're coming back with more experience, so you're able to create, not to create, but to perform a little bit better. And then for the guest, I think it's nice too, because if you really like something, a dish, you can come back the next year and try it again. Sometimes in Pujol, other than the mole that's being forever on the menu, most dishes are on the menu for 4 or 5 months, and sometimes we never do them again. And I think that's a pity, and it's something that we're actually changing. We're going back to that system that I learned over there. It's also the only restaurant that I worked at that was not mine, because after I graduated from Everest, I immediately came to Mexico.
You knew you'd always return to Mexico?
You never know. I think when I graduated, I applied at Marriott. I had no idea. One of the weekends that I was in Chicago, my dad invited a friend of his to the house. I went to the market and bought some things and cooked up something. And the guy was really impressed. And he said oh, my mom has a space in Colonia Condesa in Mexico City. I've always wanted to open something small, like a wine bar with some bites. Would you be interested in running that? And I said, yeah, of course. My visa was running out. It was also the change of the century. So I was ready to come back. It was 99, the winter of 99. So I took a couple of weeks off the last 2 weeks of December, went to Brazil, partied my ass out for the change of the century, and then landed in Mexico. And then that project never came. He backed up because he didn't have the resources, but I was already here and I had no option of staying because my working visa was already expired. And I started looking for spaces and investors. And then the Pujol location came out. It was small enough, simple enough investment, and we just opened.
Wow, that's really wild. It's also wild what Mexico, the food scene in Mexico City, I haven't experienced it firsthand yet, hopefully very soon, has become, which is crazy. And a lot of people ask me for recommendations whenever they travel around the world. And if I go to my sources, it's 100% of the people I ask for Mexico City recommendations obviously say go to Pujol. And you open that in 2000, did you think it would be an instant success?
No, I knew it was not going to be an instant success. I didn't think it was going to take so long. It took so long. I thought it might take us a few months to get the ball rolling, and it took us a few years. Fortunately, we were staffed very slim. When we started 6 of us, I think the second year there was 8 of us. No, it was it was easy to maintain. Even if we were not having so many people, we weren't losing that much money. And in 2004, we started to get a little bit of the traction going. Also, the style of cooking started to become more personal, because when we opened, because I had been trained in the US and saw all these chefs doing new American food, to me, it makes sense that we can do that in Mexico. But what I was doing was actually doing what they were doing with Mexican ingredients. No, so back then, I don't know if you remember, but there was scallops and rack of lamb on every menu, seared foie gras. No, it was that era. So we were doing seared foie gras with mango, and we were doing the rack of lamb with Mexican chocolate. No, and we were basically doing the same thing as these guys were doing, and just twisting it a little bit so it had the Mexican component. And then by 2004, we were more, I wouldn't say authentic, but more rooted in what Mexico City is, utilizing not only ingredients, but also recipes, references. The street food scene in Mexico City has always been beautiful. And the first few dishes that we did with a clear Mexican identity were street food dishes, also because you remember one of my favorite all-time books is the French Laundry book. And coffee and donuts and the carrots and the peas. And I was okay, let's do esquites and tacos al pastor, can also play in that league. And that's how we also started.
So cool. We have to hit upon the mole because it's one of the iconic dishes at the restaurant. And I know you've said mole kind of summarizes Mexico, but why is that dish? Tell me all about it. Why is it so important to you? And how long has that mole madre been going now?
Mole, originally, we were so, I wouldn't say afraid, but very cautious on how we approached it. It's a dish that is a celebration dish, and therefore it's taken very seriously. If we screwed up an esquite from the street, people might not feel that offended, but with mole, like this is like playing with the culinary gods of Mexico. So we did try a couple of versions of a mole with black garlic and some deconstructed ideas, and we weren't very happy with it. And then Ricardo Muñoz told us about a mole that was being reheated for 7 days. We got invited by Vallejo to cook for the first year anniversary of Quintonil. And we said, okay, we're going to do it 15 days instead of 7, because it was like that was the celebration dish. No? So we did, we served it. We were really happy with not only the flavor of the mole, but also like the experience of it. It felt like very celebratory, the way people were eating it. The first time we served it was just like a pool of mole, and we gave the tortillas, but it was like in a deep dish. Then we started like dunking the tortilla to make like an enmolada, and then putting some sesame seeds on it, and we just kept going. And obviously, as we made a new batch, put the old batch, and it's like, okay, this is like a starter dough for bread.
That's what I was thinking when I was like learning about it. I was like, this feels like a starter. You just keep feeding this thing. Like, and then I was talking to someone else. I was telling them about it. Is there another cuisine that has something of this nature? Like, it's not an Italian red sauce. It's not like a curry. I don't know.
Somebody told me one day that they had a pot of like eternal consomme on the restaurant, but I don't know if it's like, I mean, in Mexico, culturally, it was not a thing either. And because it's also not fermenting, it's on the stove, and it's been on the stove for 10 years.
That's so crazy.
It's crazy.
Man, that sounds so delicious. Will you tell me about that conversation you had with Ricardo Muñoz? I know he was mentioning like you have this responsibility to Mexico, and that like really stuck with you.
Yeah, Ricardo they call him the king of Mexican cooking. He's 10 years younger than I am. One of the most well-read people in the industry. He wrote the Encyclopedia of Mexican Cooking. If you're interested in Mexican cooking, it's a great resource. When he saw that we were like, he told me like, you're very shy about how Mexican you are. Like, you need to stop being shy about it. And yeah, that's what resonated on me. He's like, you're very talented. Your precision in the cooking is great. You need to start working more and more with techniques and ingredients from Mexico. And I think, no, that's a responsibility, And yeah, it just resonated. I never took myself so seriously, even as we became like a little bit more protagonic on the scene. I've always tried to step away from that kind of idea. I believe my main responsibility is with my guests and with my team, and then everything else is also a consequence. So even to this day, I don't feel like, okay, like I'm like an ambassador to Mexico. I've never felt that way. It seems like even a little bit like ridiculous to see yourself as that. But I do.
Having all that you have accomplished, you're pretty low key about everything, and I feel like people have said you're low key. Do you ever feel pressure, like to strive for perfection?
I feel the pleasure. I remember when I was working at Everest, like the pleasure of putting a dish that is great on the pass, like that sense of pride that this is fucking amazing. I think that's also great. I don't feel pressure. I do feel overwhelmed sometimes, like anybody else does. But I think it's also part of the industry, and you have to enjoy that stress. I think also, even though we take it very seriously, we're, like you said, we're like not as serious about it. I understand. I mean, life happens, no? And like in nature, no? Like if you're close to cooking, you're close to the products. If you're close to the products, you're close to the producers, close to the nature, and then you realize nature, even though it's perfect, it has its setbacks. So I don't feel pressure to perform personally. I do feel pressure to perform collectively, but I also have a beautiful team of people working together with us, and I know we can rely on each other. No, so if I fuck up, the guy next to me is gonna point it out and is gonna correct it. No? And I think that's the beauty of cooking.
Let's talk a little bit about your newest book, Sunny Days, Taco Nights. Can you just tell us all about that book?
Boogie Nights is one of my favorite movies of all time. They used to play disco music in the markets in Mexico, so it was great. And when we were talking about a new book with Fiden, I also always wanted my books to be in the kitchen. So the past few books that we had, I think this is our 8th or 9th book. The last ones have been like specifically for the home cook. I think tacos have also expanded so much, and not only in taquerias, but people actually making tacos at home, like carne asada on the weekends. So we wanted to celebrate the taco culture. I think tacos are getting an upgrade, not because before they weren't sophisticated enough, but I think we weren't putting as much attention to the tortilla as we do now, to the quality of execution that you can have in tacos. No, I think I always like to say in sushi, everybody understand that there's the sushi rolls that you buy in Costco, and then there's the 3 Michelin star sushi restaurants in Tokyo, no? And everybody's happy with that, and nobody questions why those two things coexist. I think with tacos, maybe with pizza happens the same, no? Like some people say like, oh, no, pizza shouldn't be expensive. It's like, I mean, it doesn't have to be, of course, but it could be if you're executing with super high quality ingredients and you're paying attention to everything. That is our thing with tacos. We wanted to celebrate the classical like street tacos from Mexico City, and then just show like a little bit of the tacos that we like to do ourselves, like more composed tacos, plated tacos. I do remember one of the also life-changing experiences is I went with Alex Tupac open in Pejon, I think was it 2010 or 2009, something like this. And he was doing Jean George dishes on top of a tortilla, questioning why he couldn't charge the same as Jean George just because he was on top of a tortilla. And that also resonated so much in my head. It's like this, I've never thought about it that way, no? And we were being very careful about, like, we were also like very shy on tacos in Puyol. There might be like one taco on the menu, and then after that, we just started like also exploring a lot more, playing around with the fillings, with the tortillas. I think as we learned, I think the more you learn, the more purist you become. So now we're like a little bit more purist. Maybe we'll be playful in our old age or older age. I mean, now it seems so easy to understand, but back then it wasn't.
Eric Repair should put one of his dishes on a tortilla.
He was recently in Mexico, and I told him, I'm going to send you some tostadas for your ceviche. One of the most amazing guys I've ever met.
Oh, the best.
I think that's the beauty about our industry, no? Like there's so, like the quality of the people.
That book too, did you ever read his Return to Cooking? That book hit me. It was fascinating. What a cool story, and a pivotal moment in his life now that he talks about how he was like burnt out at that time, and it almost helped restore him in a way.
He's definitely not burned out anymore. He's more alive than ever. And it's crazy, you know, like the restaurant still, I don't know, it was recently like 50, or something like this. It's crazy. And it feels so contemporary. I think that's success in terms of cooking, no? When your dish becomes from the past, the present, and the future. It's like a tortilla, no? Like a tortilla is from the past, but it's perfectly like a contemporary thing, and you can also see it 100 years from now being present. If you want to talk about success, maybe that's the only way of approaching it. And happiness is also a success.
When you started talking about the book, I just remembered I was visiting some family in Tulsa, Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago, and we went to this restaurant called Noche, which I've been reading about. It was a delicious meal, but they had a really nice collection of books, like right when you walk in, and they had one of yours right there placed. I don't know if you could see that, but it was right there, like placed on the shelf. A bunch of great books scattered throughout, but they had your Tu Casa, Mi Casa book.
Please say thanks on my behalf if you see them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so how'd you feel if we did our first ever Beyond the Plate taco speed round?
Vámonos.
Number 1, hard or soft taco?
Depends where I am.
Meat or seafood?
Seafood.
Spicy or mild?
Super spicy.
Most underrated taco?
A chicharrón en salsa verde.
One taco for the rest of your life. What is it?
Rice with avocado.
Love it. Can you tell the type of person someone is from their taco order?
Yeah.
I always feel like when I'm in New York City and I'm in line getting a bagel, there's so many different orders, and some of them I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
What's your bagel?
I get something different because I'm always like, I like to try new things. I never go for the same. But I think like one of the ultimate bagels to try is like an everything with like vegetable or scallion cream cheese. Like I like a lot of flavor like that, but I also like a simple like sesame sometimes.
I like a viali with cream cheese and just plain lox. If you like a simple taco, you're probably a simple person. But I also think like we were saying, no, like depending on the occasion. Like if you went out to have some mezcales with your friends, no, and it's 3 a.m., might not be as classy as
That's exactly right.
like a taco bar experience. That doesn't mean you're not classy. It just means you're happy.
What's the egg and green bean taco?
So there's huevos con ejote is like a very traditional breakfast in Mexico City. Sometimes you also put like a little bit like a salsa macha on the scrambled eggs with the green beans. So the version on the book, it's more like a little bit fancier, no, like with a small hard-boiled egg. But you can do that in the morning. So if you just cooked green beans for your chicken, like whatever's left over, you chop it up, a little bit of scrambled eggs with the beans and a little salsa macha on top, and it's heaven.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, I know we're wrapping up here. I want to talk a little bit about social impact and giving back because our podcast celebrates that with all of our guests. It's one of the reasons we started this podcast, is to shine a light on the good that the industry does in the community. So I would love for you to talk about, whether it's an organization, a cause, whatever it is. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
If you want to, we can speak about the heirloom corn that we work with. I think it's super important to understand corn as we understand coffee or we understand wine, like a crop that represents terroir. What we do is we work with small farmers and don't buy out all of their production, because I've seen that, for example, in Chiapas, I've been to the market now and you see this beautiful pink and purple beans being sold for pennies, and then the women going to a convenience store on the corner and buying a Coca-Cola with what they sell of beans. And to me, that's like a little bit sad. So we like to work only with excess production, making sure that you're not depleting the communities of their resources. And I think also telling them that and making sure that they understand that what they have is super valuable. And like Carlo Petrini said, in the founder of the slow food movement, that to me is also one of the most interesting people in this industry. He said that if anybody on the chain of production suffered during the process, then it cannot be called fine dining. So it cannot be fine dining if somebody got underpaid, if somebody got depleted from their land or their products or whatever it is. So yes, of course, sustainability is an issue because of labor, but also making sure that fine dining has a good repercussion of the community is fundamental. It's not about getting the best, but being the best. And I think that's like a good way to understand it. In Pujol, we're a certified B Corporation. And I always remember when we were getting the certification, it was like, you don't have to be the world's best restaurant, you have to be the best restaurant for the world. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, taking the whole supply chain into consideration. I love that.
They have these three concepts now in slow food, which is like good, fair, and clean. Those are the three principles of production and good food.
And they're really not that hard when you think about it.
Exactly.
Since it's our first episode of season 12, that's such a great point of view. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And for everybody listening, if you haven't listened before, I always like to say, when it comes to social impact and giving back, give what you can. You could use your voice, you can use your dollars, and you can use your time. It doesn't have to be all three of those. It could be one of them. It could be 30 minutes a month. It could be $5. It doesn't have to be all the money in the world, but you really can make a difference by using your voice for a cause that you believe in. So I just like to spread that gospel. All right, let's do a quick Beyond the Plate speed round, and then we'll close it out. Number one, what did you have for dinner last night?
I had chicken soup for dinner last night.
Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
I love garlic and butter.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Maybe hard-boiled eggs when they're overcooked.
What pisses you off in the kitchen?
When it's messy.
What makes you happy in the kitchen?
When I'm with my friends.
You shared a couple great books, but is there another specific book or resource that you would suggest to a young cook?
One of the early Jacques Pepin books. There's one called The Apprentice. I believe that's a fantastic book if you're starting.
Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, I'm going to close it out here. We have an audio newsletter called Heard, where I share a few things on my plate at the moment. Could be a restaurant, a product or an ingredient, sometimes a recipe, or something philanthropy related. I would love to learn one thing on your plate that I can feature in one of our forthcoming Heard episodes.
If you haven't tried the heirloom corn masa from Hacienda, I think that's a great way to start making tortillas at home.
Love that. Good tip. Thank you. And where can everybody find you? Website or social media?
I'm not very present, but I do have an Instagram account. It's Enrique Olvera F. I don't post that often, but when I do, I try to make it with care.
Awesome. Chef, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thank you.
Find all social media links for myself, Beyond the Plate, and our guests in the episode notes and on beyondtheplatepodcast.com. As always, a big thanks to the whole Beyond the Plate team. And if you have a moment, we'd be grateful for your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday for an episode of Beyond the Drink, our companion podcast of Beyond the Plate, brought to you by our friends at Ford's Gin. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.